Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. It's kind of sunny here today, which is nice. And today I thought I would talk about privilege separation and process separation, because these are some things I've been doing lately in Serenity. And I'm really growing to appreciate these concepts. And the basic idea is that instead of having a big, complex program that does a whole bunch of stuff, some of them risky, you break that program into many smaller programs, and then you have them coordinate with each other to achieve the same task that the previously single process program was doing. And this buys you a few things. I mean, let's be honest, there's a fair amount of overhead to architecting this way, to building programs this way, but if you do, then each component can be very, very small and streamlined, focusing only on specifically what it needs to do. And not only that, but you can also restrict the capabilities and privileges of those individual programs much, much more than you could if they were all running as one program. So a typical example would be something running and talking to the internet. And you have like a big program and it, for some reason, connects to the internet. Now, connecting to the internet is taking on a whole host of risks, right? Because you don't know if you're talking to a malicious host or if you have a bug on your side that will do something funky. And if it's possible, then separating out all of the logic that talks to the internet into a separate process somehow, that will allow your main program to say, I'm not even going to use the internet, so take that capability away from me. Now that allows you to reason about your main program better, because you know, okay, well, this will never be connected to the internet in any way. And likewise, it allows you to reason about your program that does connect to the internet, because it won't have all this other stuff going on inside it. It will only be doing that one thing, ideally. Anyway, so that's the basic idea, and I think it's a very, very cool concept. And I remember when the Chrome browser first came out, and they had the tabs in separate processes, and it was just mind-blowing how cool that was. And it seemed like such a neat and novel concept to me at the time, and I was really impressed with it. And I was really happy when Safari eventually got process per tab, although, as I recall, the first version of that was at an OS X Lion or something. I don't remember which OS X had it, but there was one release where there was only one web content process, not one per tab, but like one per Safari. So if you crashed one tab, you still killed all the other tabs as well. So you had all of the complexity and not much of the benefit for that one release, and it was a kind of a sad release. But things got better, and I think it's in a very good place today. And process per tab is the standard for browsers these days, and it's obviously where we're going to go with the Serenity browser as well, once we resume working on that more actively. And I really like process separation and privilege separation, and there's a bit of it going on in Serenity, like actually kind of a fair amount, because we have the lookup server that does DNS requests, and we have the protocol server that does HTTP requests. They run as separate users, and they are, they pledge and they unveil and they restrict themselves, so that those internet-facing programs run with a very constrained set of capabilities, which is very, very good, because if something happens to them, some malicious DNS server or whoever sends us something that we can't handle, and we start doing something we shouldn't be doing, then that process is limited, very, very limited. It's not running as my normal user account, so it doesn't have access to anything of mine. It's doesn't have access to the whole file system, just a very, very tiny part that it needs. I think to maybe not even anything. I don't recall. I think maybe we were actually able to remove file system access completely from it. I think, and it's just very limited in what it can do. Likewise with the HTTP stuff in protocol server, it also runs as a separate user, right? And so it doesn't have access to any of my stuff. And even if it were compromised, it can't do a lot of things. Like it can't fork, it can't execute, it can't open files, write files, all of this stuff. And I think that's really nice. And so yesterday and the day before, I moved the Windows server to run as a separate user account as well, and moved the system menu into a new process that runs as my user account. And so that allowed me to restrict Windows Server even more, so now he can't execute new programs, which was previously needed for the system menu when it lived in the Windows Server. And so I really like this, like chipping away at big monolithic programs in the system and like taking out the some part that that requires some additional privilege, and then you can, once you take that part out and move it into a separate program, you can remove that privilege or that capability from the main program. So I was really, really happy and excited yesterday when I was able to remove the exec pledge from Windows Server. That felt really good. And that means that now if a malicious something takes control of Windows Server, it cannot launch a new process image. Like, it's limited to running Windows Server. And I don't know, I think that's really neat. And this is something that I think it's really, really fits the whole Unix philosophy of having many small programs that each do something. It's like the pipeline stuff, right? That you learn on the Unix command line, where you pipe things together. I feel like it's not like completely analogous to that, because it's not the user stringing together arbitrary programs, but rather it's like GUI programs being composed of strung together little programs. And I think that is really, really cool. And the more I do it, the more I like it. So I guess I just wanted to make a video talking about how much I like it. Now, there's definitely more that we can do in this area. I'm just stopped at a red light here. There's definitely a lot more that we can do for privilege and process separation. And I'm still discovering how to apply this to the system. And I feel a little bit like we are in uncharted territory here, because there's a lot, like if you look at OpenBSD, for example, they've done a ton of this pledge and unveil stuff to their user space, but their user space is mostly console programs, right? And here we're trying to fit it into a GUI and see, like, instead of like trying to take some ports tree GUI and retrofit these restrictions to it, we're trying to figure out, as we're building the GUI, like, okay, so how can we sort of decompose the different things and then restrict them and then put them back together, but have them all contribute one small restricted part and still achieve the same whole. I don't want to act like it's never been done before, but it does feel a little bit like there's not so much reference material to look at. So it's interesting. Now, I think this type of feature, if it's working correctly, you just should not notice it. And as a user of Serenity, which I guess is me, I should not notice that Windows Server is running as a separate window user, right? It should just work. And but it should work, and it should get me some capabilities that I can be slightly more confident are not going to screw things up. So now that Windows Server runs as a separate program, for example, it can display notifications from the notification server, and I don't have to worry that the Windows Server or notification server can read files in my home directory, because neither of them have access to it. And I can send a notification to the notification server from my user account, and the notification server will send it to Windows Server on my behalf, and so on. And things are like sort of separated from each other, but they still work together transparently, so you don't notice that this stuff is isolated from one another. I don't know, it's just really cool. I like it. What can I say? And I recognize that there's definitely potential for like over-engineering with this type of stuff, but I think we're still in pretty good territory. And as long as things are simple and it's just a consistent application of simple concepts, then I think that it's hard to go wrong. And consistently applying a simple security mitigation is, it seems less error prone than like bursts of some big fancy security techniques. But I don't know. I'm still pretty green and naive about these things, so I'm learning, and it's really fun to learn. And I guess I'm looking forward to see what else we discover that we can do with simple techniques and this tried and tested concepts like file system permissions and user accounts. We're only beginning to see the potential, I think. Anyway, I guess that's what I wanted to talk about today. So thank you for hanging out with me on the commute, and I'm arriving at work here, so I will see you next time. Bye.